Welcome back, everyone. My name is Joel Feld, and today I wanted to go over the concept of formatting your hard drive, but more specifically, creating partitions and volumes on your hard drive. Here we go. You might run into the scenario of needing to format a hard drive, whether it be a flash drive, an SD card, external hard drive, whatever it may be. You typically want to format it to be in the correct language for your devices to communicate, copy, and read and write to that drive. This example here, I have an external hard drive that I'm going to be using to demonstrate all of this. I will say, naturally, if you're formatting an SD card, typically we would not let the computer do that. I would recommend, if you're using that SD card within a camera, let your camera format that memory card because it's going to format it in a very specific way to that camera. However, if you have a flash drive or an external hard drive like I have here, you would want to format that drive in a language based upon the use of what you plan to do with that flash drive or external hard drive. I have a whole other video that I will link down below that talks about formatting and the different formats, but this video specifically is going to be more on the concept of partitioning a hard drive as well as creating volumes. So let's go ahead and plug this in to begin with. It's going to show up on the desktop. There it is. If I double click on this and open it up, there's nothing on this hard drive. I can see that it's 5 terabytes, it's LaCie, and if I right click on this hard drive and choose Get Info, the drive is formatted as Mac OS Extended Journaled. It gives me the capacity and the available space that's left on there. The next thing is to open up the software tool that allows us to format or create partitions or volumes for this hard drive. That application is called Disk Utility, and it's located in the application folder. And if you scroll all the way down towards the bottom, there's a folder called Utilities, and then you'll have Disk Utility right here. You can also access it through Launchpad, go to the other folder as well. So if I click on this, it's going to open up, and this is Disk Utility. Let's go ahead and get rid of Finder behind there. Now over here on the left-hand side, you are going to see a category called Internal, and then you see a category called External. Now, if you don't see all of these options below, it could be because you may only have Show Only Volumes, or you may have it set to Show All Devices. Whichever it may be, I often like to say show all devices so I can see everything that's underneath a particular hard drive. And here I can see that under the main internal hard drive, it has a container. That container contains a volume of Macintosh HD. It's actually a volume group container. And within there is the Macintosh HD hard drive and then the data aspect of that hard drive. And the way the Mac works is it splits your internal Mac hard drive, splits into 2 different volumes. One has all of the applications and the Mac OS and everything that is needed for that computer to run. And then your other volume is actually where all of your data is stored. This is how it allows you to use different troubleshooting techniques where you can actually re-image your computer, reinstall the Mac OS without affecting any of your files because it's only doing the one volume of your Macintosh that is the Macintosh HD here. It's not doing the actual data part of your hard drive. You'll also notice that across the top, the erase button is not illuminated, so you can feel confident that you will not accidentally erase your internal hard drive because it won't even let you. Now, at any given time, you collapse these so that you don't see all that craziness, or you can go back to show only volumes and you're left with just your main hard drive at the top. I'm not going to go over all of the options because that other video that I have explains a lot of that. So let's start off with partitioning. Let's talk about why you would need a partition or why you would need a different volume. I guess it really depends on the use or your purpose. The concept of it is being able to almost have like different compartments within one hard drive. For example, this one hard drive is 5 terabytes. It's a lot of storage. But let's pretend that I may use this with a Windows computer, or I may use it where I want to isolate photos from videos. It's a different method to separate all of your files and kind of have its own room. I think of it like this. It's almost like living in a house. In your main house, you could have one giant room where everyone shares everything. It can get pretty crowded. Or you could create different partitions in that house, and then everyone is going to have their own bedroom, and you have a kitchen, and you have a living room, and everyone has their own space. So that's kind of what I think of a partition is. It's taking that one giant space and breaking it down into these little spaces for specific reasons. Do you need to do that? Probably not, but this is the whole concept and purpose behind it. So that is a partition. So with this hard drive selected, I can go to the top of Disk Utility, click on Partition. After I click that, I'm going to choose the plus sign, and that splits this hard drive in half. So think of it, now I have the kids side of the house and the parent side of the house. We're putting up a wall. They have their space and we have ours. So I can click amongst both of these, and it allows me to retitle and also designate how much storage space is in this individual partition. Let's just stick with the concept of I do a lot of video work, I do a lot of photography work. I want to make a partition for video and photos. So we're going to do photos. I'm going to go to the name here, and we're going to type in photos. And I want to designate, we'll just say 1 terabyte of storage. So then when I click on this big pie shape, you'll notice that photos is a small slice versus the remaining, which is 4 terabytes. I can rename it videos and press return. So now I have 4 terabytes dedicated to videos and 4 terabytes dedicated to photos. Also keep in mind, there's this little circle here that allows me to change the designated storage for that partition. But if you want to be more exact, you can just type in the actual size over here. And you can also change it from kilobytes to megabytes to gigabytes to terabytes to petabytes and EB, what is that? EB, I don't know. That's a lot of storage. That's all I know. I can't afford anything more than a terabyte. So if you know what those are, I could Google it, but if someone knows it, throw in the comments below. That's above my pay grade, I guess. So we're gonna leave it at 1 terabyte. We'll press return on the keyboard, and oh wait, no, I don't want videos as 1 terabyte. I want videos as 4 terabytes. There we go. We reversed it. All right, so now what we're gonna do is choose apply, and it's gonna say, hey, partitioning this device will change some of the partition. No partitions will be erased as of now. Words of wisdom, I would always recommend that if you are partitioning or creating volumes on any external hard drive or flash drive, just make sure you have a backup of all of the files that are on there. Also, I recommend that the moment that you get a new external hard drive or a flash drive, the first thing you should always do is format it to the computer that you use, because majority of the drives out there come formatted in a Windows language versus a Mac language. And that will make more sense if you watch the other video, but we'll probably talk about that here too. I digress. Let's go ahead and click partition. So now it's going to go through a process, and it's going to split this one big bucket into 2 different buckets for us. Perfect, and it looks like it is done. Operation successful. I can go through the logs here, but I'm gonna go ahead and choose done. And you'll notice that over here on the right-hand side, we have photos and we have videos. Now, if we get the information on these, right-click on the photos, do get info, and I'm going to right-click on videos, do get info. I can see that the photos is formatted macOS extended journaled. It's got 1 terabyte of storage, and the video is 4 terabytes of storage with the same formatting language. I'm gonna call it a language just because I think that makes sense. So we took that initial 5 terabytes of storage, and now we have, instead of 1 bucket, we have 2 smaller buckets. So now we can easily separate these 2, and you're not storing all of your files in 1 big bucket. It's a little bit easier to manage. Now let's go ahead and close this out, because let's say down the road, I need to repartition this and I want to add a 3rd partition or a 4th partition. So if we jump back to Disk Utility here, we're going to go ahead and select the hard drive, and it doesn't necessarily matter which option you choose. When you click partition, it's going to bring you back to the same exact screen. So here we're back at 4 terabytes, we're back at 1 terabyte. Now if I clicked on videos here, if I change this to 3 and press return, what it does is it actually creates a 3rd partition. It doesn't add that extra terabyte to photos. So that's a big distinguishing factor between partitions and volumes. I can always subtract and add it to a new partition, but I can't subtract and add it to an existing partition. Very important. So here I can take away from videos, but it's not going to add it to photos. It's going to add a brand new partition, which I may or may not want. If I wanted this partition to be dedicated for photos, videos, We'll just call it work files. I can dedicate this 1 terabyte to that, or if I wanted less, I can drag the little slider, and because I had that video selected first, it's deducting from there. If I click the minus button here, it goes back to square one, and if I click the photos and then click the plus sign, it's dividing that partition up. So it's adding another partition to the partition that's already selected. Say that 10 times fast. So here it split it into 50-50. I can say work files. And if I wanted to, I could even change the language or the formatting format, the formatting type, whatever you want to call it. I can change that here too. So if I wanted it to be exFAT so that I can go between my Windows computer, I can do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and choose apply. Pops up the same message. I'm going to do partition. Operation successful. I'll choose done here, and now you'll notice that on the right hand side I have my photos, videos, and work files. If I get the information on the work files, instead of it being macOS extended journaled, it's going to now be exFAT for the Windows side. So what we've done here is take this main 5 terabyte hard drive and we split it up into different rooms so that we have one room dedicated for videos, one room dedicated for photos, and one room dedicated for work files. And as you select these on the left-hand side, you can actually get information from this window right here. It tells us the volume at the top, the format, the space that it has, and everything below. It would show you used space, how much free space you have, so on and so forth. If I go back to partition, I can just repeat this process over and over again to create a new one. So I could click the plus sign again, and it's just going to create a new partition in the partition that I'm currently selected in. If I choose cancel here, we'll go back. I'm gonna do partition one last time because let's say I want to delete this work files. I don't need it anymore. I will select it, click the minus sign, and now it's gonna regain that space back to the original partition that I created it from. So it's adding that extra 500 gigs back to the photos to make it 1 terabyte instead of adding it to the video side of things. And then I will choose apply. And now keep in mind, if I had anything on that work files partition, it's gonna be wiped because it's deleting it. So you'll notice here, partitioning this device will permanently erase the data stored on some of that partition. You can't undo this action. Make sure you have your stuff backed up. So I'm going to choose partition. It's going to go through that process, and it's just going to leave us with the photos and videos left. And here we go. Photos and videos. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much how to create partitions. Now let's go ahead and move on to volumes and understanding the difference between partitions and volumes. You'll notice if I go back to the left-hand side and we select that original top level of the LaCie hard drive, you'll notice volumes is not available. You'll also notice if I go to videos or photos, volumes is still not available because volumes can only be created on a hard drive that's formatted as the APFS format. This is Apple's new file system that is designed to work best with solid state hard drives, not necessarily older hard drives like this that have the spinning hard disk inside, but you can still format any drive as this APFS or Apple file system and it will work. I'll link this article down below so that you have reference to it, but that's why we cannot currently create a volume because this is currently formatted as the Mac OS extended journal. So if I want to create a volume, that means I have to start from scratch and wipe this whole entire hard drive again. So words of wisdom, back up your files before you format it. Let's go ahead and erase this and look at volumes. So I'm going to select this hard drive here. We're going to choose erase in the top right. I will just call LaCie 5 terabytes. The format here, we want to choose APFS. You could do encrypted, you could do case sensitive or case sensitive encrypted if you want to, but I'll stick with APFS and I'm going to go ahead and choose erase. So now it's going to wipe both of those previous partitions off of there, and I'm going to be left with one giant bucket, one big house again with everyone sharing the entire room. Yay. All right, so that process is complete. I can go through the logs here if I wanted, or just choose done. Over here on the right hand side, we have the LaCie 5 terabytes. I can right click, choose get info, and now we can see that it is formatted differently. The available space is 5 terabyte and the capacity is 5 terabyte as well. So now when we select this, notice the left hand side looks slightly different. Whenever you format your drive in this Apple file system, it stores the partitions and volumes in what's called a container. So you'll notice that this main hard drive here is the main hard drive, and inside of there is a container, and that container holds the different partitions and volumes. So here we can see the 5 terabyte APS volume that we just created. You'll also notice that now across the top, we can actually click the plus sign or minus sign for the volume. Now, if I do that, it's going to give us an option to add a volume. We're going to come back to this in a second though. If I click on partition, you'll notice it brings up the same exact window, but when I click the plus sign this time, it's going to say, hey, do you want to add a volume to this APFS container, or do you want to divide it into separate partitions? If I did partition, it does exactly what we did before, but I don't want that. So I'm going to click on minus. Choose cancel. If we go back to partition, click the plus sign, instead do volume. This is going to be the same thing as the other window that we just saw by going up to the top as well. You can get to the same end result either route you take, but just know that we're looking to create a volume, not necessarily a partition. So when you create a volume, the biggest difference is that volume can expand if needed. So unlike a partition where once we created that video partition, we could never make that partition larger. We could only make it smaller. So here, let's stick with the same concept. We're gonna do photos and we want it formatted as APFS. Notice you don't even have any of the other options available. And then the other option that we have is size options. And size options allow you to either reserve size for this volume or quota size for this volume. And so we're gonna come back to this and I'll show you exactly how that works. But let's click OK for now, and we're gonna choose photos and do add. Choose done. Notice we have two items. We have the 5 terabytes and we have photos. And if I right click on photos, do get info, right click on LaCie 5 terabyte, get info, you'll notice that the capacity is the same on both. These volumes are able to fluctuate based off of the limitations that you give it. So if I open up this LaCie and I open up this photos, both of these are two different rooms, but they almost have like an invisible wall to it. They're both collectively taking up the space. If I go into the Finder here, let's just add a photograph here, a picture into photos, and notice it doesn't go to the other volume. They're still separate, like a partition. If we take a step back, when we create another volume, we're gonna look at these size options and see how this works. So let's go ahead and do 2 gigabyte reserve, and we're gonna reserve 2 gigabytes for this volume. So I'm gonna click OK there and then choose add. Now we have a third volume over there on the desktop. Let's create one more volume and we're gonna do 2 gigabyte quota. Size options, we're gonna designate only 2 gigabytes to this and we'll choose add. So now what we've done is we've created 2 more volumes on this one hard drive, one with a quota of 2 gigabytes and one with the reserved space of 2 gigabytes. Now the difference is quota, you can't put larger files that are 2 gigs in this volume. If it's over 2 gigs collectively, it's not gonna work. It's gonna say you don't have enough space because the quota is only 2 gigabytes. If we open this up, create a new Finder window, let's add in a file here. Here's one that is 2.74 gigabytes. Let's try and drag this into the 2 gigabyte quota. It's not gonna work because there isn't enough free space. So if I take this 1.7 gigabyte one, drag this to there, it will copy just fine because it's under that 2 gigabyte threshold. Now, if I go and open up this reserve, I've reserved a minimum of 2 gigabytes, but I can go larger. If I wanted this 2.74 gigabyte one, drag that in there, it's gonna work perfectly fine. If I want this 4.6 gigabyte one, I can drag that there as well, and it's going to copy that file also. The minimum it can be is 2 gigabytes, but it can expand to be larger. So that's the difference between the reserved and the quota when you're changing those settings on that volume. If we go back to disk utility here, we have all of these different volumes. I can add more volumes if I want to, but I'll choose cancel there. If you go to partition, you're gonna notice that it's just still one giant bucket, but all of these volumes, you don't really have that slider to designate because the volumes are designed to fluctuate and change. They're not forced into one specific size. Volumes can expand and contract where a partition can only contract. You can't expand an existing partition. So here we can click the plus sign, and if I wanted to, I could add a partition. Now you'll notice that that partition, or I should say all of the volumes on that one partition stay there, and this new partition is going to be completely separate from the other partition that has all the different volumes. So we could say this is 1 terabyte, and we could change this to a different format if we wanted to, because keep in mind, the partition allows you to have multiple formats versus a volume has to be the APFS Apple file system. If we wanted this to be the Windows side, I could say Windows, we'll change it to 1 terabyte and choose apply. So now it's going to say partitioning this device will change some of the partition. No partitions will be erased. The partition that will be added is Windows. This partition will be resized. The following, the 2 gigs quota, 2 gigs reserve, LaCie 5 terabyte, and the photos. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose partition. After this process completes, we'll end up with 5 different options on the desktop. 1 being the Windows partition, and then 4 of the remaining volumes that are all the APFS format. So now I'll choose done, and over here we're left with all of these. I don't know why it left us with just W, but that's okay. Get info, and here we have 1 terabyte formatted as MS-DOS. Just don't use that format. I don't think it's a good format. If you go back to disk utility, sometimes I find that it takes a moment for it to add into there. So what I usually do is just go up to view, do show only volumes, and then it magically appears for some reason. If I didn't want any of these volumes, or if I didn't want this partition, I can just select it, and I can go to partition. I can select it here in this little pie, click the minus sign, and choose apply, and it's going to remove that partition, and that space will go back into the original volume that we had previously. Choose done, and now we're left with these. If I wanted to get rid of any of these volumes, I can just click the minus sign in the top, choose delete, and it will delete that one, and we're just slowly going back to what we were before. Or if there's nothing on this hard drive and you want to start from scratch, that's where you just select the drive, choose erase, and then we're back to square one of erasing the entire drive and starting from scratch. That is pretty much the difference between volumes and partitions. One other helpful hint, what I actually like to do with external hard drives is customize the image of it, and actually have a whole nother video dedicated on this, which I'll link down below. So here's what I like to do. I like to get the info on the icon. I'll select it in the top left. I can choose edit, go to copy, and then I'm gonna open up preview on the computer. After I open up preview, I'll go to file, choose new from clipboard after I've copied it, and I'm left with this image. Then what I do is I go to the markup tool, I will add a text box, and I can say, well, this was what, photos, we'll say 1 terabyte. I'll select all of this, I'll copy it, so then I would come back to the photos, and if I paste it, it now says 1 terabyte on there. And if I go back to the original picture, I'll do 4 terabyte. And then again, I can do Command A to select it all, copy it. I'll get the information on the video one, move this to the side. We'll go here, select that, make sure it's blue. That way you know it's selected. Do Command V to paste. So now I can visually see that one says 1 terabyte and the other one says 4 terabyte. You don't necessarily need to do this with the icons, but I think it's kind of fun to alter and customize it, and you can change that picture to anything, but again, check out that other video that I have, and that will give you more detailed information on that. Also, if you ever wanted to get rid of it, revert back to the original, you can select it up here, press delete on your keyboard, and it's going to put it back to the default icon or folder or whatever it was previously. So let's close all of these out. One thing I did forget to mention is whenever you eject a drive that has multiple partitions or multiple volumes on it, in the rare chance that you could potentially corrupt or lose files on this external hard drive or flash drive, it's always a good habit to get into to eject your flash drives or your hard drive, whatever it may be. So there's a few different ways to do that. If you're in Disk Utility, you can click the little eject button over here on the left hand side, and when you do that from Disk Utility, it's actually just going to eject all of them. If you're not in Disk Utility, if you need to eject something, you can either right click on one of these items and choose eject. You can drag it down to the trash can, and notice that the trash can in the bottom, when you're not selected with that external drive, it's the icon of a trash can. But the moment that you start dragging this, it actually changes to eject. And so if I let go on top of there, it's going to pop up a message saying, this volume is part of a disk that has other volumes. Do you want to eject just this volume, or do you want to eject all of the volumes? If I just chose eject, it's only going to eject the video but leave the photos. I still don't want to unplug this because it's still connected to the photos volume. So if I right click on the photos one and choose eject, it will just eject that one because it's the last remaining volume. Now I can safely remove my external hard drive without the concern of corrupting the files or anything like that. So that is pretty much how to partition and create volumes and the difference between the two on your external hard drives, flash drives, or whatever you may have. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button below. If you want to support this channel, hit that thanks button too. And if you learned something new, go ahead, hit that subscribe, tap that little bell, and we'll see you next time.